Welcome to the Great Ideas Podcast, where we explore many topics, including leadership, teamwork, relationships, business, politics, pop culture, health, sports, food, and anything else that's a great idea. I'm your host, Barry Moline. Today, we're talking with Myke Merrill, the owner of 5020 Communications. Myke has been a counselor and organizational leader for over 50 years. He's based in Western New York, but he has spoken and consulted in many countries around the world. In his PhD dissertation, Myke developed the concept of reality intelligence, which enables people to develop an effective and accurate awareness of what they experience. It's based on 4 complexes: perceptions, emotions, motivations, and behaviors. Myke has also written 29 books and training resources. In our conversation, we discuss reality intelligence, and Myke explains how that framework helps people understand and articulate their feelings, as well as navigate personal and professional relationships. He shares practical examples, including handling difficult conversations and emotional responses. Finally, Myke emphasizes the importance of presence, understanding, and open communication. It's a great conversation, and you're sure to learn a lot about navigating emotions, both your own and those of others around you. Let's get into it. Welcome, Myke.
Hi, Barry. Thank you for having me on this afternoon. It's been very good to be here with you.
Awesome. So, Myke, you've developed this framework about how to approach life and issues that we all faced called reality intelligence. Tell me, what does that mean?
Reality intelligence really takes the concept of emotional intelligence to its fullest extent. Emotional intelligence is not just a course you take or a book that you read. It's how to understand emotions in a sensible and an effective way. Reality intelligence deals with perceptions, how we perceive the world, emotions, how we react or respond to those perceptions, motivations, how we prepare to act, and our behaviors. So I found that emotional intelligence and psychology and all of that really was too limited for how people experience their own lives and their relationships with others. Those relationships might be in a work environment, might be in a neighborhood, might be in their family, might be the guy in the mirror. And the problem that most people have, that I found, is the struggle to find words to grapple with things that are slippery or ethereal or really tough to even wrap your mind around. Reality intelligence provides the language and the concepts that are fairly simple to be able to do that.
When you talk about emotions, are you talking about finding the right words? Like I don't know. My wife is better at describing how she feels, and I'm not as good. And when we're having a conversation about a difficult issue, yesterday she said that she would appreciate if I spent a little more time with her.
Sure.
Just put it that way.
Okay.
Because I had been running around all day doing a variety of things. And then I went out and I played pickleball for a few hours, and literally, I left her at home, and, she felt a little lonely. And when she came back, she was a little perturbed, and she said that. And honestly, I wasn't exactly sure what to say, but I knew she was right. And I said, I'll do the best I can, or something of that nature. It didn't go quite right.
In your description, you used 4 different emotional words to describe the situation. Okay. You said she didn't appreciate it. Appreciation is an emotional word. She was perturbed. That's an emotional word that's a little bit more intense than not appreciative. She was set back or set off and wondered. Those are all emotional words. So what I found as I listened, I spent probably the first 10 years of my professional career listening without an agenda to what people were saying about themselves and about their relationships. My doctoral work was formed on creating a new taxonomy for counseling. I'm a pastoral counselor. I teach counseling. I work with people all over the world who are supporters or interveners in people's lives. And the mystery is often emotion, at least the way we frame it in our minds. I've worked with CEOs and managers in companies and people who are youth workers say, when somebody gets emotional, I just shut off. I walk away. I don't understand emotion at all. I say, well, could I help you with that? And the answer is, I don't think you can, but give it a shot. So I'll say, there are tens of thousands of words that can be used for emotions and all the various adverbs. I'm very, I'm somewhat, I could be, all those words. What I found is that human beings have 5 basic emotional systems, just 5. I tested this theory out. I examined many, many people from early teenagers through people about to die in their 90s. And as I listened to how they framed their own feelings, I found that there were 5 consistent systems, like rivers of flow or environments of air, that people, rooms of life, styles of clothing, pick any metaphor you want. There are 5 ways of understanding emotion. So I have.
Are you gonna tell us?
I have. I have complicated words that I use and I teach, but let's start with the simple words. The simple words are love, fear, anger, sadness, and happiness. Those are the 5. Mm-hmm. I call them by more neutral and advanced words. They're systems. There's a system of acceptance that's in a mild form: curious, interested, preference, enjoyment, love, bonding, cherishing, obsessing, craving, addiction. The difference between an obsession and a curiosity is one of intensity. It's about, I want to bring that to myself. I want to accept it. I want to have it in. When couples start dating, how do you know they're falling in love? He stinks to high heaven, and she says, that's not so bad. She looks ugly with no makeup on. He goes, I just love her that way. So what? What you would have been offended by 6 months ago, now you find attractive. So now you're attracted to the smells, the actions, and as love gets into dangerous territory, an obsession or a craving or an addiction, you find that one person can be extremely abusive of someone else, but they accept it. Why don't women walk away from abusive men when they get beaten black and blue? I love him. I want to give him she accepts certain things that are really unacceptable in other relationships. But the system of acceptance has mild words, moderate words, and extremely intense words. And it's about what you will draw to yourself. Exposure is the word I use for fear. Exposure system is about a lack of safety or security. When you're shy, you got butterflies, you're a little embarrassed, you blush. That's mild. When you're afraid or scared or feel guilty or ashamed, that's much more intense. When you're terrified or phobic, it is extremely intense, but it's all about, I don't feel safe or secure right now. I'm at risk. There's danger. So anything that presents that causes me either to react or to respond with an emotion of fear in some version, I call that exposure. The third one I call empowerment. That was the hardest one for me to name because I wanted a neutral word for anger. When I talk to people, I would say, so tell me about your anger at your mom or your dad or your spouse or your work. I don't really get angry. I'm not allowed to get angry. Excuse me? No, my mom told me that anger is evil and I should never feel anger. So anger is bad. I did read a book titled The bad emotions. And in there was fear, anger, and sadness, depression. They're bad emotions. I developed a theory. There is no such thing as a bad emotion. Anger's not bad. Fear is not bad. You see a rattlesnake crawling at the foot of your bed, you better jump and move out of there quick. You see a fire starting, fear is appropriate. It's actually helpful. Anger about injustice, about something that truly is wrong, is a very helpful emotion. So the anger itself is not the problem. It's what is it doing to you and what do you do with it? So anger at a mild level, I'm annoyed, I'm miffed, I'm pissed off, I've had it. If it increases, it becomes anger, fury. I'm really mad. I am at a breaking point. When it gets to extremely intense level, it's rage, it's violence, it's out of control. I put competitiveness, the competitive spirit, into the realm of empowerment. You look at a batter who's struck out the last 3 times, and he's facing a 4th time at bat, and he's gripping the bat. The muscles on the side of his jaw are flexing. His brow is knit. His eyes are penetrating. Everything says this guy is so angry, but he's competitive. He's trying to bring all of his power and energy into a situation to get change or to dominate. That's what anger is about. It's about change. So I've walked into situations where a couple is really at each other's throat, literally harming each other. And I will say, could we change how we're positioned right now? Would you mind if we sat down? It's a change. If they agree to that, I know that they're following my lead. We're going to go somewhere with this. I walked into a house once where the husband had a loaded gun on the counter. His wife was by the sink in the corner. She couldn't move.
Wow.
And I said, could I have a cup of coffee? Would you mind? And she said, he won't let me. And he snarled something back. I said, well, let's just calm things down just a little bit and let's get a cup of coffee. That change allowed them to begin talking about some really serious issues, but I had to be the change agent of something very simple because anger is about change. So when they were willing to go along with my suggested change, they used up some of the energy and their rage became fury. And then their fury became anger and their anger became annoyance. And now we could start talking about the issues that got them there. That's how that worked. So the system is empowerment. The 4th one I call depletion. It's sadness, feeling blue. I'm not happy. I've sensed loss. I'm grieving. I'm hurting. I'm wounded at a much more intense level. I feel stabbed in the back. I feel empty. I'm hollow. I'm exhausted. The difference between exhaustion and feeling tired is one of intensity, not a different emotion. We just have a different word for something way up there compared to something way down there. So I call that depletion. A woman came into my office once and said, Pastor, my doctor wants me to go on antidepressants, and I want to know what your thoughts are. And I said, why does your doctor want you to go on antidepressants? I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but why? She said, well, he says I'm depressed. And I said, are you depressed? She goes, I suppose I am because he said I was. I said, let's start this conversation over. Go out of my office, come back in and greet me again, and then say, Pastor, I'm depleted. She said, what? I said, just change the word. Let's see where we go with it. She actually literally walked out of my office, walked back in, and said, Pastor, I've been feeling really depleted. And I said, so what tank in your life is dry? What's gone dry? Without missing a beat, she said, since my husband died about a year ago, no one's hugged me. I just haven't had one of those hugs that just, puts life into you. And I haven't laughed. There's just nothing funny. So we talked about that for quite a while. I said, before you start antidepressant, I'm not saying that there's not a chemical imbalance in your brain. In clinical terms, when your brain is out of balance, you take medicine for that. When your eyes don't work, you wear glasses. That's fine. But when we use medication to deal with our emotional state of what I call depletion, we cannot refill the tanks that are empty. Sometimes it's just dehydration. What do you do for dehydration? Take an antidepressant? No. You drink 8 ounces of water and you refill your tank. When you haven't laughed, find some buddies that you really can get to that true mirth, that joie de vivre that's deep inside of you, and that refills the empty parts of your life. So I call the fourth emotional system depletion. And the last one I call celebration. Celebration is about shining. It's about happiness and joy and thanksgiving and gratitude and a shining of your life. You spread out. So you see a friend. I observed this with teenage girls in the mall. This is what just hilarious. We're walking down the mall. I had a couple of kids from my youth group, and we're walking to 13, 14-year-old girls, and they see some friends from another school that they hadn't seen for a while. And immediately these quiet, timid 13-year-old girls are screaming. They're jumping up and down. They're throwing their arms out, their eyes open wide. Their voices go way loud. They run across the mall, grab their friends, give them huge hugs because they're so thrilled to see them. Later on, I noticed as we walked along, they saw another kid that they knew from their school, and they go, "Hi." What was the difference between this exuberant ecstasy and a pleasantness? One of intensity. So I call celebration the shining of your life and spreading out. You become much more generous. You become much more giving when you're happy, when you're joy-filled, than when you don't have that sense of. So there's 5 emotions: acceptance, exposure, empowerment, depletion, and celebration. But there's intensity levels: mild, moderate. So now your wife was perturbed. That's an empowerment word for me. She wants a change. Does she want you not to play pickleball ever in your life? No. She wants to be included. She wants to know that your acceptance of her is stronger than your acceptance of your pickleball players, at least occasionally. Or something else was going on yesterday that she really wanted to talk to you about and kept thinking in her mind, I really hope, that's an emotional word, that he will come and pay attention to what my need is right now, but he didn't do that. So I'm disappointed. That's a depletion word. And I want to let him know he better do things differently in the future. That's an empowerment word. So now, when we're going to talk about it, I say, well, so tell me what you would like to change. Tell me what hurt you and how did it hurt you? What were you hoping to get? What were you accepting or drawing towards yourself? When you saw your husband, he came in the house, was that thrilling for you, or was that a moment that had tension in it? Well, now we have lots to talk about because we can apply the concepts of 5 basic emotions, which is a part of reality intelligence. And I have the language to say, I know it's global. I know it's huge. I know you can't get your hands on it. But basically, did you draw it to yourself? Did you feel unsafe? Did you want to change something? Were you wounded or hurt? And you got to recover. Do you shine? Does that make you glow? Now, if the person says, well, I certainly was not glowing unless you call being red in the face a glow. I said, well, okay, if you don't call it that, I don't call it that. It was really, if we have to narrow it down, at that moment, I wanted a change. Okay, so we're in empowerment. Let's figure out how intense that was. And what do we do next? Now, we have handles on slippery things because we took vast areas of human experience and said there's only 5 of them. So pick which 5 they are. Which one of the 5? And let's start there and begin to explore.
Yeah, in this particular situation, I want to have a few follow-up questions.
Yeah.
But in this particular situation, granted, we want both people to understand the range of opportunities to understand how they feel and also how to respond. And so she responded, well, I believe she felt perturbed.
Yeah.
It wasn't rage.
Nope.
And I did recognize that I had not spent a lot of time with her, yesterday. And I said, I don't know that I actually said anything. What I did was I sat down with her. She was sitting out on the porch and she, said these things. So I just sat down and started talking. So I didn't engage in I'm not saying this is good or bad. I didn't validate her feelings. I may have said something like, I'm sorry, and something of that nature, just something quick. But then I just sat down and we started talking and we had a nice conversation. And
let me back up just one second.
That shifted to another conversation.
So I'm only observing. When a person is in some realm of empowerment, they want power. How does a person exhibit power? The person who moves has less power. The person who stays put has more power. So when you say to your child, come in here, I want to talk to you right now, the child has to move to you. You're the anchor. You're the one that is set. So without even understanding, when your wife stays in place and you move towards her, she's sitting down and you join that level, she has more power, which uses the energy of that perturbation or anger, and she feels it less because it got used up. It was a fuel, and the fuel was expended by you. I use this term, but this isn't the best term. You gave in. You submitted. You yielded. And so she has more power. And it's about, I wanted you to do something differently that you did not do. So an apology will help. But actually, the best thing is you stayed put. I came to you. You were sitting down. And I did not say, stand up here a second. Let's talk about this like husband and wife. You said, you're sitting down. I'm going to join you. And that uses, now you have a healthy relationship. So when the relationship becomes incredibly destructive, then I will find one person of the couple comes in and sits down in a chair, but far enough away that they're not within arm reach of the other person. And then the most offended person stands up and takes a battle stance. So I watch that, and that's a power play. The one individual is accentuating their power by standing up, by being forceful, by shoulders, all the body language stuff you've always learned. But it really has to do with, I need more power here to accomplish the change or domination that I want. So I'll watch that and say, may I comment on that? And I've had couples say to me, no. Okay. And then two sessions later, they say, you were going to say something a couple of sessions ago. I'm curious as to what that is, because the emotion came down and they were ready to begin engaging what was going on. So I remember that. I stockpile that in my mind. If they ever ask about that, I know where I'm going to go back to. And I try to do it in neutral terminology. So it's not like you were going to beat him to a pulp or you're going to scratch her eyes out. Those are all endpoint statements. I will say, it seemed to me that you were tapping into something that really has deep roots here. This is a well that goes way, way down deep. And if you spurt that water out, that's not going to end the artesian effect of what's really down there. This is pretty deep, isn't it? And they'll go, it is. It's really, this has been going on a long, long time. So a long, long time or a long, long, long time? And they'll laugh. And I'll say, well, not that long. Yeah, really, it's like since the beginning of our relationship. So now we're starting to get, that's the roots of this. This is not something that has to do with going and playing pickleball. It has to do with, I have never had power over you. You've always violated my trust or my expectations. As soon as I hear ever, never, always language, I know they're lying. I know that's not true. Because you always leave your socks on the floor. You don't always leave your socks on the floor. So as soon as I hear ever, never, always language, they're lying to themselves or they're lying to me. But it's a starting point. So are we talking about what they want, what they fear, what they change, what they're wounded by, what they're happy about? Now I have a starting place. And I don't have to wander in the woods trying to figure out what is anybody feeling. Nobody has any words for this, or they're using the wrong word. It's like, this is just like, you just stabbed me in the back. Stabbing is a wound. That's depletion. I got to heal. This is not about healing. It's about control. So I'll say to a person, now that's interesting. That sounds like a reaction rather than a response. Do you want to react right now, or would you rather respond right now? Well, I don't know how to respond. Good insight. All I know what to do is how to react. So now I know that instantaneous, spontaneous steps are much more the way this couple's dynamic works than planned, thoughtful. So when we get to this point, what I would like you to do in response is to say, I am truly sorry for what I did. We're not there yet, but I want you to understand, here's how we respond as opposed to react. So we get in a conversation. I'll say, now's a good time for that response. And I've had couples go, the tears start. I am truly sorry for what I did. Now they're responding. I have to teach them respond instead of react, because all emotion, all five of them, are either a reaction to a situation or a response. And people say, I react, I overreact. I know I overreact. Okay, you do overreact. I'll go along with that. Would you like to learn how to overrespond instead of overreact?
Well, before the response, do you teach people to take a breath?
Oh,
reactions are often knee-jerk, and that's when that's
reaction versus response.
Physical response.
Absolutely.
You get a burst of language, whatever that might be. Yeah. Is there a pause in there that people can use?
Absolutely. If that becomes helpful, and I will even say, would it be helpful if we just took a breath right now? How about if we stand up and sit down? We're not saying any words. We're just going to change. That's about anger. We're going to stand up. We're going to take a breath, and we're going to sit back down and continue. What was the last thing you said just before we stood up? 99% of the time, people say, I don't know. I've had people, I own a sign company. I'm actually sitting in my sign company right now, and I deal with a lot of clients and business people and whatever. And sometimes signs don't go exactly the way we had planned them, or they fall off the wall, or whatever. They peel apart. And I've had people come in, and the way they deal with a product that didn't meet their expectations is, some people get mouthy, some people go behind their backs, other people get confrontational and really angry. And so I've had people come in screaming mad over a product that didn't meet their expectations, and I will say, I think you're absolutely right. I think I'm agreeing with you. But what I would like you to do is say exactly what you just said to me, but about 3 degrees cooler. Could you say that? Just what you said. And they'll say, I don't remember. What did I say? Did I say I don't want this product? I said, no, you don't want this goddamn product. I don't think I swore. Well, you did, but say the same thing, but say it a little cooler to me. I don't want this goddamn product. Just say it cool. And they'll say to me, I don't think I can really say that. You're a minister, and like, okay, what would you prefer to say? And now I'm coaching them in a response instead of a reaction. But it's very interesting. Stand up. Let's take 3 breaths. We're not saying a word. We're going to sit back down. What did you say just before we took that break? People say, I don't really remember. Because reactions are so spontaneous, it is not a function of what they really think and feel, but they don't know how to think and feel. Reality intelligence, for me, is a frame. It's a frame around life. And we get to put that picture in the frame. The frame helps us with where the boundaries are, with how to define things, where the corners meet, and if there actually is a corner or is it a round frame. And it really has to do with being intelligent about reality. I mean, that's how I came up with the name.
So let me ask you a question. Is response in all the elements of reality intelligence, is response a kind of a core, I hate to call it a problem, but maybe a problem that is woven throughout all the 5 elements of reality intelligence.
The 5 emotional systems have to do with the nature of emotion. When I was doing my doctoral studies, I read every psychological foundation. Freud has a concept, and Rogers has a concept, and Anderson has a concept, and everybody's got their own framework. And nobody had an agreed upon definition for what an emotion was. Nobody's seen one. I mean, you can't take a living brain apart and see what an emotion is. We know what it does. We know how it acts or doesn't act, but we don't know what it actually is. From the amygdala, is it biochemical? Is it electrical? What is it? Learned behavior? Is it automatic behavior? Is it evolutionary? Nobody really knows. So every theory is a little bit different. So I went to my advisor and I said, I cannot find one definition for emotion. And he said, write your own. I said, I can't do that. And he goes, yes, you have to write your own because you're an expert in the area of emotion. I said, I'm not an expert. He goes, you're getting a doctorate. You're going to be an expert. So write your own. Okay, all right. Don't get feisty with me. That's an emotional word. And so I thought and struggled and worded things, and I came up with the link between our perceptions and our motivations are the affective reaction or response that prepares us to act. That's what an emotion is. It's an affective reaction or response to our perceptions leading to our motivations. It's the link between what I perceive and how I'm motivated to behave. And so I ended up with a circle of 4 heads. One is perceptions, the second one is emotions, the third one is motivations, and the last one is behaviors. And they trigger in that sequence. But once they've triggered, they interact. So if you act on your anger or you choose not to act on your anger, it changes how you perceive things. Your eyes actually see better when you're angry. And I physically know why. And there's a physical reason for that.
Because they dilate?
No,
they don't dilate.
Don't
they constrict.
dilate.
They constrict.
Yes. When you are in love, your eyes expand and you see more light through the entire lens, which shortens the depth of field. So you move closer. When you're angry, your eye goes down to a pinpoint, and when light goes through the center of your lens, you can see far, far distance in clarity compared to something that's close. So if you're going to throw a weapon or attack something, you can see it much more clearly when you're angry. When you want to see someone's face, your eyes open wider and you have more light go through the entire lens of your eye. So there's a biological factor that's in here. But your anger, your love changes how you see. It changes how you listen. It changes how your skin works. It changes how your balance happens. You find girls are falling in love. Why do we call it that? Falling in love. Because your vestibular system, your balance, gets off balance, and for sexual reasons, you either fall backwards or you fall forwards. And you find teenagers that are just beginning to get infatuated and falling in love, and they fall all over each other. Their vestibular system, because of their emotion and because of their processes, alters the way their bodies maintain balance. So then I understand all that and I can explain it. You know, my son is in love with this girl and they're just like all over each other all the time. I say, well, that's interesting. Do you find that abnormal or offensive? And they'll say, I just don't like it. Why don't you like it? What does it do to you that your son is in love with a girl? Now we're getting somewhere because I can find out not about the son and not about the girl. I can find out what's going on for the parent, because that's really what the issue is right now.
Yeah, how they're perceiving it. Wow. This is fascinating. I want to go back.
Yes.
Just for a second. I am a hockey referee, and in my youth, I was a professional hockey referee.
Yes.
And I've had a lot of training. In fact, part of our training camp, which we did 2 weeks every year, was psychological. We had a psychologist come and teach us the psychology of players,
Right.
and then how to interact with people when they are angry, how to make friends with players quickly, how to bring them to your side, because there's going to be a lot of tension
Correct.
in a hockey game. Yeah. So I learned techniques.
Yep.
Because when I make a call, invariably somebody's going to disagree.
That's
Maybe
true.
half the people in the crowd. Mostly I'm concerned about the coach and the player. And in the moment of making the call, going to the penalty box to report the penalty, and then returning back to everyone's position to get going, there's an opportunity for a player and the referee to interact.
Right.
Let's just call it interact. Yeah. And frequently the player will say, "You dirty rat.
Right.
You effing this. I didn't touch him," or "He did it first," or "He was holding on to me and I had to respond," yada, yada. And what's key in that moment is for the referee to have a minimal response, because the player's angry. So we're talking about that reaction. They're not contemplating the situation. They're just reacting. And the key that we were taught is let the players say whatever they want.
Right.
If their arms go all over the place, or if they start swinging things, swinging a stick, whatever, if they go in the penalty box and slam the door, that's over the top. Then you have to penalize that. But let the player get out their emotion,
Right.
get out whatever words they have.
Perfect.
And in the process, and here it is you want to engage with the player and be using your hands to say, to push
Right.
down. Hey, let's, I hear you. I hear you. You're pushing down. You're saying, let's talk about it. Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah. I saw a little bit differently. I'll get him next time. Whatever it is, you just want to say anything that's soothing so that the player feels a little bit heard. Sure. But most important is that no matter what they say, they just got to get it out.
Right.
So they go to the penalty box. So that's what I was taught.
Yep.
Today, I still referee. And a lot of my colleagues have never been through that training. I try to share it with them, but they've never been through that training. And when they're skating the penalty box and the player says, "You dirty, rotten, effing, yada, yada," that referee,
reacts.
Without that training, reacts and just gives them another penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct. And then that player gets more angry. It escalates, and then they slam the door and they get a misconduct, and now they're out for even longer.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess the question that I have more than anything is about that reaction. And I think that it worked the way you described it with the girls at the mall meeting their friends. That is a reaction. Yep. They were very happy. They were exuberant. And then you have the opposite reaction of the couple that's angry or having a fight, and they're not listening to each other, but they're reacting immediately. And I think my question is, a friction point is not the right word. It's a place where two plate tectonics meet.
Yep.
It seems like in many of the elements of reality intelligence, you have this point of meeting. See, I want to call it friction, but it's not friction.
Right.
Well, it's a point of meeting.
Yes.
And is that a place where you teach people to control or to at least understand what's going on at that point of meeting?
Yes. In hockey itself is a violent sport. It depends on violence. Everybody's got a tool. And
True.
You are whacking a black frozen puck as hard as you possibly can and aiming it directly at other human beings at high speed, and they're trying to catch it or deflect it. So the game itself is different from football or baseball, where you're trying to hit a ball away from where the players are. You don't want to hit it towards where the players are. And your tool, your bat, is rounded and soft, not a hockey stick. Hockey stick has an edge. It's got a curve. It's long. And you're in direct contact with a weapon. Football, you have your body. There's a ball. That's it. With hockey, it may as well be a sword or a gun, that's probably where it came from. What happens is, for me, the preemptive would be, as the official, to say to both teams, this becomes part of the culture of hockey. I know that some of you get very angry and upset quickly. I respect that. You are highly competitive, and anger and competition are sisters. So that one will feed the other. Some of you are guards. You back off. You pass off to someone else. I also respect that. But some of you are shooters, and you're going after the goalie with everything you are to the point of danger. What I want to say to you is, if we run into an altercation and I have to penalize you, you can do anything except weaponize what's in your hands. You can scream, you can curse, you can do whatever you want to do. And I'm going to respect you because you're intense, and I love that. So you're playing a game, somebody gets penalized, the guy's mouthing off to you, and you as the official go by and say, thank you. You showed me something really authentic. Let's take it up after the game. And you'll find that they'll just go, all right, you're right. They will respond because you treated them. You're not trying to penalize them or remove that. You're trying to say, I recognize that's part of this game. What I want you to do is choose to control that one aspect that has to do with injuring and possibly injuring another person. When you do that, you scream at me, but you don't slam the door. Thank you.
Now, interestingly, invariably after the game, referees are on the ice, the players are shaking hands. The player who's angry will always come back up to the referee and say, hey, man, I'm really sorry.
Yep.
I lost it and I shouldn't have.
And you say, I get that, and I respect you as a player because you have that fire. What I want you to do is turn the fire into jet propulsion instead of destructive forest fire. Same energy.
But and that place of meeting, when you talked about the woman who came into your office and said she was depressed, and you said, leave the office and come back in and say I'm depleted, was that also a place of, where she is trying to categorize how she feels, and she was moving farther down, or the doctor had moved her farther down on the continuum, and you wanted her to talk about, now tell me about the elements that are actually depleting you, and let's figure out where you actually are on the continuum.
And it could be many, many people are trained in our culture to assume that whatever a doctor says to them is absolutely right. And so you don't question it. And so what I wanted her to do, if her brain had a chemical imbalance that was resulting in a clinical depression, there are medications that will help her get through that difficulty of that season, that day, even that year. That can go on for an extended period of time. When the brain simply doesn't produce enough dopamine or other kinds of chemicals that help you regulate sleep at night, I understand that. Her doctor could be right. But what I wanted her to do was think for herself. One of the challenges of today's society is we have artificial intelligence everywhere. When I was writing a note to you about this particular meeting, my Google Gmail wanted to suggest words that I did not intend and I was not thinking, but it wanted to finish. As soon as I typed 2 letters, it wanted to put it in there. To me, that's artificial intelligence. It's putting me out of my own life. What reality intelligence does is it deals with what is real to you. What does it mean to you? How do you think about it? And I've had people say, just tell me the answer. So I'm not going to tell you the answer because I don't know your answer. What I want you to do is struggle with this until now. Let's wander around. I do a lot of counseling by wandering around. I learned that from a business book, to manage by wandering around. And I counsel by wandering around. So we hit an impasse and say, okay, let's stop talking about that. What was the last table game you played? And I go, what? Let's just, what'd you have for dinner last Thursday night, a week ago? I don't. Just think about it. What'd you have? And they'll think. And once they engage their thinking, they say, okay, let's go back to our topic and say, okay, I do have an answer now. Because artificial means, whether it's a book or a website or somebody else's counsel, is artificial to my thinking process. What reality intelligence is, think for yourself and learn better how to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, that's what I will teach you.
All right. So I know people will want to learn more. You've written 29 books.
Yes.
Right? 29 books.
Okay. I published 29 books. I've written more than that, but yeah. When we found out that I was pregnant, so don't anybody who's listening to this, well, they all know. When we found out, the day that I found out I was pregnant, my wife was pregnant with each of our 4 children, I bought a 300-page spiral-bound notebook. And I began writing each of my unborn children a letter from me to them about life. From 8 months out, 7 months, their birthday, every trip we took, when they lost their first tooth, when they had their first kiss, when they fell out of a tree being stupid. Everything that happened in our lives, I wrote about 300 pages for each child and then gave them their books when they were 21, when they turned 21. I got O.J. Simpson's autograph on a Buffalo Bills ticket and stapled it in one of my kids' books. I have Pete Rose's autograph stapled in another kid's notebook. I have Doug Anderson's autograph, 3 great football players, sports people, and I stapled in another kid's book. We were at Disney World, and Goofy signed one of the kids' programs, and that was my daughter's favorite, so I stapled that in her book. You lost that stuff. And I told the story of how she cried until Goofy hugged her. And she stopped crying and hugged him back. I would never have remembered that 2 days later, but I wrote it in her notebook. And so I've done that kind of thing. I've written 180 plays and skits and for my church that allow kids to get up and act out in a 1 or 2 minute action that's beyond everything else I've written to. So, I mean, I write. I've always been a writer. I've loved putting my thoughts down and then sharing them with other people to be able to utilize.
By the way, what a treasure that is to create that book for each of your children, and then it's the story of their life.
It is.
Wow.
And I've traveled all over the world. So I've taught for weeks in Africa. We went to Taiwan. I built a school in Honduras. We've been to England, Hungary, and I would sneak their books, or sometimes just one of them, and write about the whole trip. And then I would put in the other kids' books, be sure to read about the Honduras trip in Josh's book. And so now they're reading each other, or I would start a story in one kid's book and then say, this is continued in Tim's book. So you've got to get Tim's book to find, and I did that kind of thing. I did stuff like that. I drew cartoons and made puzzles. I mean, I did whatever I could do to capture the essence of what it means to be alive.
Yeah.
And I would create that. I would write that. That's what I've always done. Reality intelligence for me is the summum bonum of that process.
So how can people learn more about it? Is that in one of your books, or is it in a couple of books?
For reality intelligence, is actually on Amazon. The book launches day after tomorrow, Wednesday.
So that's Monday, May 21st is the book launch.
Wednesday, May 21st. Is it
called Reality Intelligence?
Is the book launch. It is on. What I did was I wrote the book. Took me about 1.5 years to write. This is the second edition. The first book was called Why Do People Act That Way and What Can I Do About It? And that came out of an OSHA course that I was asked to write in 2012, Re-engaging the Disengaged Worker. And so
OSHA, meaning that's a book about
OSHA
safety and how for people to work more safely.
Caseworkers. Yeah, it was for workers' compensation caseworkers. Sure. And at the very end of writing it, the Obama administration took online courses off. So they gave me my course back and said, you can do anything you want with it, but you just can't call it Re-engaging the Disengaged Worker. I said, why? I won't. So I wrote a seminar called Why Do People Act That Way? Parenthesis, what can I do about it? Then I did that seminar all over the country. And then when people came out of the seminar, I say, so where's your book? I said, well, I never wrote a book. Well, put this stuff in a book. So I wrote that and published that in 2019. I have a friend in Washington State. His name is Myke Wilson. He's West Coast Myke. I'm East Coast Myke. And we teach together, sometimes virtually, sometimes live, on why do people act that way. Well, as we have been training colleges, college students, high school groups, corporate CEOs, keynote speakers at events, while we were doing that, we added, because people would ask questions, well, what makes an emotion happen? So we eventually said, well, your perceptions make an emotion. There's 10 senses of perception, not just 5, and they trigger your emotional reaction or response. Well, what happens as a result of having an emotion? What do you do with it? Well, it stimulates your motivations. It's either what you think about or what your habit is or who you are as a person. Then what do you do with your motivations? You either act out an engaged action or you disengage. And you get to choose, how do I take what is my experience and act on it? Then once you do that, it's a free-for-all. But we can take that tangled mess of yarn and we can untangle the pieces, follow the threads until we know, here's what you perceived, here's what you felt, here's how you got ready to act, and this is what you did. Is that accurate? And they'll say, kind of, but you're missing this piece. Okay, let's go back to, now we can refine. We can add pieces and take pieces away. And people go, I don't like it, but I understand and I know what to do. Is I don't always have to agree. We don't have to come to, we're all hunky-dory and happy family. That at the end, we can still have very serious differences. But now we have the handles on this slippery, weird-shaped thing called life to be able to say, here's what I perceived, here's my emotion. I know I have a word for it. Here's how I am motivated, and here's how I act. Or this is what I didn't say. When you talked about the hockey player who comes afterwards and he says, I'm so sorry, I didn't get a chance to say that. That was a disengagement. He had something to say that he chose not to say. And it's like, I'm good with that. Why didn't you say it in the moment? Well, now we're getting back into the fisticuffs of a particular moment, but it's to say, I thought it and I didn't say it. Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But now I understand. I hear what you're saying, and I'm really impressed with you. When you said you sat down with your wife and you were talking about it, I don't know whether I actually said I'm sorry or not, but somehow she knew, well, you've got years and years together. So she has a thorough awareness of what your hesitation or sorrow or apology or any of those things are. But the biggest thing is you came home and you sat with me. That's all I wanted. I just wanted you to be present. Did you say the right words? I don't even know. I don't even care. It was that you were there. So when I do counseling, instead of saying, I never say I understand. And even in this entire time we've been talking, I've never said I understand, because it's up to the other person to understand. And my response is, I'm here and I have you. I'm with you.
Wow.
And that's really what wounded people, angry people, depressed people, they need to know. It matters enough for you to be present with me. The old I've got your six or I've got your back or any of those concepts in the military are a way of saying you are not alone. And I don't necessarily understand what you've gone through. I don't have your frame, but I want you to know I'm part of your frame. Yeah. So I am here.
Yeah,
and that's all you have. You don't have to say anything else.
Right.
So when people, I've done a lot of funerals, 70, 80, 90 funerals. And when I stand up in front and I will say to the gathered people, so often the words kind of are socially acceptable. I'm so sorry for your loss. In this room, the person with the loss is me. I didn't know this person the way you all did. I am so thrilled to be in your presence, to celebrate this life, to mourn, to be angry if we need to be, to love on this person. But I am so impressed with what you have that I don't have. And I am here simply to be present with you. I've had people come out and say, that is the best funeral I have ever been at in my life. It's like, I didn't say anything and I don't know anything. I don't say, your loved one died suddenly of a heart attack, and I thoroughly understand. Let me reframe this. My dad died of a heart. I've seen that so many times. You have a pain. Your tire got flat. I had a tire fall off my car. I missed an appointment with my boss today. Oh, that is nothing. I missed an appointment with 3 bosses. You overshoot everything and says, I am not with you. I don't have your back. I'm not even listening to what you say. I do not do that. So instead of over placing my frame over someone else's frame, I've learned how to counsel in this way. And it's overly simplified, so there's a lot more to it than that. But if anybody who's listening to this wants to know how to counsel their own 6-year-old or their 65-year-old parent, this is how you do it. An event occurs. What does that do to you, that event? What do you do with that? Once you have that pain, that hurt, that thrill, that excitement, that stomach upset, what do you do with that? Your kid comes in late, they violated your trust. What does that do to you? And what do you do with that? And then 3 magic words. Of everything that I ever have to teach, 3 magic words. Tell me more.
Wow. And
so somebody's spouse has
people want to share.
And they committed suicide. My father committed suicide. So I understand that experience in a family's life. But a person says, I know going in, their son committed suicide. They found him in the bathroom hanging. And I will say, I'm here. I am here for you. Do you want to talk about that? No, I don't want to talk about that. Well, I'm here. And then they'll just start talking. So instead of saying, my dad died and I have all the, it is, can you tell me some more? Tell me just a little bit more about what your son was like or your daughter. And they get to a choked up point, and I'll let them get choked up and I'll say, so tell me more. Just those 3 words. Tell me. And that's my counseling theory. Now, I know a lot of stuff that's going on, and Reality Intelligence, the book, and I have an online course, and we're going to do, we have a podcast called Gripping Reality, Myke and I. It's all about these same kind of things, applications into real life situations. But what does this do to you? What do you do with that? Tell me more.
All right. Well, that's great. Myke, I'm going to put a link to the book in the show notes. And this has been absolutely fascinating. Not just learning about how I can support my wife playing pickleball. As you were speaking, I was thinking about elements of my life. I had a movie reel running in my life about all these elements and the different continuums that you talked about in love and fear and anger, sadness and happiness. And of course, I know you have broader definition there. And I think that people listening will have that same movie running in their head because everyone's lives can fit into those categories. So thank you for that. Thank you for explaining it. Thank you for your work, and I hope people get the book because that's what I'm going to do. So I appreciate you, and
thanks for having me on this afternoon. This has been very engaging, and I've loved hearing about your life as well.
Thank you, Myke.
Thanks to Myke Merrill for being our guest today, and thank you for listening. If you want to get in touch, or if you have an interesting topic and know someone you think would be a great guest on the show, send me an email at barry@barrymoline.com. And please leave a 5-star review, which helps others find their way to the Great Ideas Podcast.